Hey, hey. Happy Sunday. This is DJ Straight coming to you live again. You all know the line by now. Praise from the closet. It is a beautiful day. I'm told it's cold outside. I only looked outside, but I haven't been out there. Let's see. YouTube, you know what? Hit subscribe because I put out quite a few flyers on today on my Facebook page. And then you can also go on our website and hear our music, not our music, but the inspirational music, WGMLB.com. I've had such a great day. I had 2.5 Jesuses because I'm for booming. I heard some great messages. I said half because I had to leave one to get to another one. So every Sunday, I'm thankful because I get at least 3 to 4 Jesuses. And it's just great word coming from all different places. But today I have a special guest. Um, that he's been knowing me all my life. And I guess I've been knowing him all my life from when I recognized who he was. But I want to bring him on board, and then I want to tell you why I wanted to invite him into Praise from the Closet. So, ladies and gentlemen, what's he say? Ladies and gentlemen, people from all places, all ages, help me to welcome to the stage Jarvis Booker. How are you today?
I'm fine. How about yourself, there, Sister Lynn?
I'm doing well, but look, I'm in the closet. I'm in my uniform, so when I'm in my uniform, I have to go by DJ Straight because of the union. See,
Well, you want me to refer to DJ Straight?
yeah, because of the union,
Yes,
right? But listen, thank you for coming on board.
yes,
I wanted to interview you because when you were on with my siblings and me, I mean, you were just spitting out some knowledge. You have a wealth of knowledge on many
oh,
subjects.
thank you.
One of the things was you said give you a word and you could make up a song. And then so when we talked about interviewing you, I began to jot down some words. And I'm going to give you some words after a while. And you can do a poem, you can do a song, you can talk about what they mean to you. But first of all, tell us about you. I know you did it before, but we have a different set today. So
Right, right.
tell us about yourself, where you from, and just what you want the people to know, as they say on The Price is Right. What do you want the people to know about you? Just one or two things.
Well, I don't know what you really want to know about me. I mean, as far as like born and raised in Virginia, Cambridge, Virginia. Uh, Went to school in Cambridge Grade School and Lunenburg High School, and then left home early in the years and went to Langley High School over in Northeast, over in Washington for a while at night school, and then went basically was a bricklayer, went to bricklaying school, and
Oh,
then
okay.
after that I sort of moved around a little bit, but I stayed with that for quite a couple number of years, and then I went in the military. And then
Okay,
when I
so what
came
made
out the
you get into
military, I
school?
basically just more or less when I came out the military, I basically came back home, and I was planning on getting married to a young lady up in Arlington, but that didn't work out. So I returned back to Cambridge, and from there, I worked at Brown and Williams. And I worked there until they laid me off. They had a layoff, and that was in 76, about 79, 78, 79. Yeah, it was 78, 78. And then when I left there, I actually went to truck driving school, and that's where I started driving, you know. And I've been driving pretty much since then. Well, I also went 2 years of junior college, but I didn't complete that, you know, because I stopped to start driving my brother's truck as well. So I would work with him in the upholstery business. You know, let's see, Wilford was what number was Wilford? Bag it up, Ellie, myself, Joyce, Julius. So Wilford would have been he was number six, the sixth child. So I worked with him. We called him WB in Richmond. In 1978, I came to Richmond. I worked with him. So 1983, 84, when I started working with him at the upholstery shop. And then I went back to driving again. And then I also got married in 1982 to Gloria Jean Coles. And that was a complete change for me because I had to settle down and sort of make roots somewhere, you know.
Uh-huh.
So that made a big difference, you know. But as far as like knowing me, I mean, as far as them been answering questions as far as myself, I don't think they'll find me coming up on the Price is Right too much.
Hey, but look, already you talked about you were a bricklayer, so that's skills that you had to do with your hand. I knew you drove a truck because I definitely wanted to ask you about a trucking, especially being an African American. When truck drivers didn't always, they act as if truck drivers didn't always have a right to drive a truck. But what about the bricklaying? What was it that you did? Did you make things with the bricks, or what? How did you
Well, yeah, I
apply?
did. I worked when I first started. When I first started as a bricklayer, I went to bricklaying school right there in Washington D.C.
Oh,
OIC,
okay.
and up there on Nash Street Northwest. And what it was, I went there, and then we got jobs. I went out, and the guy came by the school where I was at, and our bricklayer instructor said they had somebody that wanted a few guys come out and work on a job. So there was an
Okay.
opportunity for us to go out as a group. We went out and worked on the job. I think we worked a week, but we never got paid because the guy skipped out and never paid us for that. And then after that, I decided to just go ahead on out there. And I was probably one of the first ones out of the class to just venture out and go ahead and get a job
Mm-hmm.
and take my chances. And I went out, and you always have to work. You got to work your way up. You don't just jump on the wall. Nobody's going to just put you up and say, well, you say you're a bricklayer, but you have to prove yourself. First of all, you're going to have to labor. In other words, you're going to have to mix mortar, pair bricks up with the brick horns and all that stuff. And then, build scaffolds, help set them up and everything. You got to do all of that before you ever get up to where you're going to even think about picking up a trowel to get on that wall. When you get on the wall, then you get a chance to prove yourself, and then you got to compete with guys that has far more experience and a whole lot faster than what they do. Because basically, an average bricklayer has to be able to spread at least,
Yeah.
I would probably say, 3 yards, 3 to 4 yards of cement or mortar on the wall, and sometimes 5, depending on the length and the guys that's working. Sometimes you may have to spread as much as 6 yards. Uh, and then come back and walk back up and lay the bricks, and you have to catch that other. You have to eat a man go meet where you started, and you got to meet somebody else. But you got to be working at it. It's not an easy. It's an easy job once you learn to do it. But when you're working your way up, you be sweating your way trying to keep up. Because you got to keep up if you want to keep your job.
It sounds like that you have a great work ethic. Where did that come from? Because you were
That
talking
came
about
from my
yourself.
father and my mother, basically. And I think as a whole, most of the people when I grew up, like I watched a lot of older people that came around because we had people like being raised on the farm. Being the youngest, I didn't really fall into a lot of the work that my older brothers may have done. Until later
Mm-hmm.
years, I helped my father a lot. But as far as really falling in there, really farming, but it's work ethic itself as a whole, I always remember my father and my mother. My father never wanted my mother to go out and work, but she did go out and work at the factory eventually. But as a whole, he would always get up early and he would go out and start working. Sometimes he would actually get up and he didn't eat breakfast with us a lot of times because he was out and gone because he had
Mm-hmm.
to get things started. And it was basically that work ethic that he had and they had as a whole was something
Okay.
that I saw in people years ago because people didn't have a whole lot, but they had pride within themselves. And they had pride in what they did, and
Right.
there's always that we learn that whatever you do your best. That you strive to do your best, and that way you always know that you can achieve and to show respect to people that's in authority that's over you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. But the most important thing is that I think as a whole, that's one thing that we saw coming up was we had parents that had to work, and my father was a great provider, because when I look back on life and think about we never wanted for anything when it
Mm-hmm.
came down to food and lodging, because they provided a place for us, and we didn't really know anything about the prejudice that was really going on, because my father had his own farm. A lot of people, they were like sharecroppers. They more or less worked somebody else's farm. And I know that my sister Halstein used to talk about the gentleman called the Warmax, and
Uh-huh.
he was telling her about how easy she had it, because they would have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning before they even come to school, and get up and go to the tobacco barn, or go out and do whatever chores they had to do on that man's farm, because their father didn't own the farm, so they had to work. And when by the time they came to school, they probably already did 4 hours of work. We didn't have to do that. Most times, my father always. That's where my older brothers may have gotten up and had to do certain things. But when I came along, he had a tractor. Uh, One thing I remember about really working a lot as a young man, young fellow, as a boy, was when we basically like plant tobacco and stuff like that. And I was basically a person that carried the water buckets to the people that actually handled the planters. And the plants, you would supply, keep them in plants, and keep that water going to where they didn't have to stop, because it was something that you had to put in the ground, and you pick it up and you let the water out the plant drop down in the ground. And that's what the little children did. They more or less did that. And then the summers was great, because we would always go out, and canning was a great thing. That's something I always remember. I never
Mm-hmm.
remember eating a loaf of bread until that was almost in the 70s. By the time I ate bread from the store, because we
Wow.
raised our own wheat, and they would carry it to the mill, and they would thresh that out. And my father would keep some in the bags of flour. And we basically, like I said, that's why I said we didn't work for anything, because if you went out, you picked blackbirds, you get the pears, and you watch. We as a little children always washed jars. Aline and self and George, we mostly like wash jars, and would always, because the little children could get their hand down in the jar to wash it out. So that's why we would be the jar washers. But basically, when the winter came, and I always remember we really had some snow then, because you had to cut a path. My father would get out and do that. That's what one of the work ethics too. I go back and look at things that he did, because he went and cut a path in the mornings when we got up. A lot of times the path was already cut when the snow came, and the snow
Mm-hmm.
was sometimes like 4 feet deep. But I had
Wow.
seen snow in our area since that time. I remember about years ago when we really had snow. But that he would cut that path to the outdoor toilet, cut that path to the pig pen, and those two into the horses into the stable. Those were the places where you made sure you could get to, so those animals could still do what you had to do with them. But other than that, work ethic, I think that's where it came from. My father, when I used to look up at him as a child, he looked like a giant of a man, because he was tall. He was like your father. He was really tall, and he wasn't muscular, but he was just well built,
Yeah.
as a person. And
Strong.
as a child, looking up at both of them, both mother and daddy, we both saw people that they had each other, because they didn't have, due to the fact the way that they were, their parents really didn't consider them and look at them
Uh-huh.
as like one of the other children when they came up. They bind together as two people, and they always taught us that we always stick together, and that we should always be there for one another. And that's what they did for each other. And they stuck together. They worked, and just went after things, and they did what they had to do as parents.
Do you think a person could grow wheat in their backyard now, like a garden?
I'm sorry,
Do
say that again.
Do you think a person could grow wheat now, like in their backyard, like a garden? You said that you all did wheat because you didn't have bread. You didn't go to the store and get bread until you in the seven in the until the 70s. Could a person grow
Well,
wheat?
no,
I'm just curious.
well, they wouldn't be able to raise too much wheat in their backyard. That's raised in a larger quantity. But basically, we had what they call a flour barrel, and that was where the people basically, because you didn't really, the only thing people bought at the store basically was coffee and sugar. It pretty much, when you kill hogs, you got the lard from the fat of the hog, and you cook those things called cracklings. Like people go to the store and buy these crackers they call meat
Hmm.
skins. they made those things. They cooked that, and that's what they cooked. The grease came from that. And then a lot of times you have what they call in the middle of the hog, and that would be a white meat, and you would fry that, and then that would actually turn around there, and that part of it, you would get grease from that, and that would be put into the bread, and that's how the bread was basically used. That they used lard, they didn't use anything like what they use now, because most of your bread today is not made with that. It's made with a lot of yeast and different
Right.
stuff. And the only time they would use yeast was if you made light bread. But now all of your bread that you buy from the store, that's why it doesn't keep as long, because it has yeast in it.
Because not fresh. All right. So I'm going on my list. I put some words together. When we're gonna meet, I'm getting ready to test your skills. I'm gonna give you a word, and you're gonna make a song up on the spot. You don't have your guitar with you, but I remember you saying that. So the first word I had was flowers. Make up a song on flowers. Let me hear you. Let me hear your singing voice. I might have Hollywood on the line.
Oh, flowers or flowers?
Yep, flowers, plural.
Oh, flowers.
Yeah.
Oh, how lovely the flowers are that we see along the way. We can always smell the roses as we drive across the field. We see the flowers growing that are lovely to our eyes, and it always brings a smile as we go.
Man, that was
That's just a little
great.
short song. I mean, I always can give a song on anything
I
like that.
know. Hey, that's why I got about several. I have several words on here. So what does integrity mean to you?
Well, I think integrity to me, it goes back to something that's within a person that another guy and myself, one of my coworkers, one time we were talking about that because he was telling me that he felt that integrity was based on education. But I was telling him, I said, no, I don't agree with that because I know a lot of people that that I saw when I was growing up, older people that had a lot of integrity about themselves. Integrity is something that I think you carry within yourself, a pride that you have about you as a person, and the style and the things that you believe and what you stand for. And I think it has to do with righteousness, but not so much with righteousness. It really has to do with the person and what they think as far as what they really think about them and the
Okay.
respect they have for other people. But the most important, I think, is just that it has to. I think it has to do with pride as a whole. That you carry, there's a way that you carry yourself.
Okay. So what did you do in the Air Force? What was your specialty? What did when you're in Air Force?
Well, I was in the army.
I mean, in the Army. What I
Well,
remember your uniform. What was your specialty? Your assignment?
I was a dental lab tech, and I basically was trained because I was good with my hands. So basically, when they test you, when you go in the military, through all the tests, they basically test you, and what they do is they figure, well, let's say you go in and you do good in the clerical, or you do good in some of the other areas. Uh, and what they do, but with me, I scored high on the dexterity part, basically. I mean, I probably scored on some other things, but they figured, I guess, with dexterity, they figured it has something to do with dental lab because when you get into that, you have to have a carving skill to be able to carve teeth. Because you have to, when you learn that, you have to be able to carve all 32 teeth uh, in wax.
Wow.
And then you have to be able to not only cast them, but you have to know how to set them up on the thing when you do a denture. You got to be able to set them up on there when somebody send you somebody's plates. You got to put them plates on the machine. And it's not a thing that's operated by anything. It's hand operated, but it simulates the jawbone and the Klondikes from your heel back. And when you open up, you got to take those and put those teeth in there. And a lot of times, some people like the teeth to look just like the natural. So when you cut out, they will make an impression of their actual mouth with the teeth before they take their teeth out. If they're getting a full denture, and what you have to do is you cut those teeth out with a little saw, And what you do is you take the teeth that are given to you and you cut them teeth and carve them at the top, and you put them in place and wax them, and then you put that in wax. And what you do is you make an exactly fitting for that person. And the only thing the dentist has to do when they get that set, if you do it right, the only thing they have to do is do an occlusal, which actually is correct the bite. If it's a little bite different, because due to the fact by the time they get a set of dentures, that gum's gonna be a little recessed a little bit. By the time they get that denture, because they're gonna wear it for a while, they're gonna have to have it relined. The same thing with you have to be able to do crown and bridge, and that's a whole lot different because when you do crown and bridge, you once you cast that heat that metal and that gold, and you get ready to cast it, you got it's almost like pickling something. In order, you can't just take it out and polish it and finish. You guys almost like pickling it before you can give it to that person with a doctor to install it in their mouth.
That is amazing because as you were talking, I remember probably over these last 5 or 6 years, I've had to do several impressions when I went to the dentist for my teeth. And I thought, wow, man, that's the nastiest stuff in my mouth. You know, when you have to squeeze on it and then they send it away and she'll say, well, let me test it and make sure it fits right, all that kind of stuff. That is a very interesting field because, like I said, you sound like you were good with your hands with the bricklaying, and then you said you work at an upholstery store. Okay. Next word I have for you is flowing. Flowing. Flowing, like you flow, but flowing, like flowing down a
Oh,
river.
like you flow with something.
Flow. Flow. I'll put
Oh,
it up on
okay.
the. All right.
Well, I got you. I got you. FLOW. Let's see. Flow. No. Well, that would be something like to me would be if I need to go somewhere, I would have to flow with the goal to see if I can stay on level as I flow along the way. That's what I would almost. I'm thinking about flow, because when you think of flow, it's almost like you flowing with the current.
Yeah, flowing. Yeah. So I'm going to challenge the audience that's listening. If you all have a word for him to write a song or a poem, send it to us or live on YouTube, and he's going to sing about it. Okay. Now I know you've been driving a truck for a while, and I wanted to know how was it when you first started driving a truck, because I was told that it wasn't always easy for African Americans to be able to get the load, empty the load, and do whatever else you needed to do, because it just wasn't a career that was open to African Americans at first.
Well, I think there's a lot of careers wasn't open to Americans. When you go back basically, there's a lot of careers that wasn't really open. But I go back the guy I remember, Mr. Williams. His name was T, because his mother and them couldn't read and write, so they named all the children with alphabet. But he was telling me about he was a truck driver. Now, when I met him, he was probably in his 70s when I met him. And when he came to Bible Way Church in Blackstone, Virginia, yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
could tell me about something like that. But myself, now, when I came in, the only problem I had, and he would tell me about the different things. And I've talked to some older drivers over the years that actually ran the road. And it was the same way with drivers as it was with Black people that travel, because Black families, that's why when they went somewhere, if they drove, they would cook that chicken and all of that and get them some bread and fix that stuff and have it along the way, because they would stop. They couldn't go to restaurants, so they would
Mm-hmm.
stop. Then they would stop along the way, and they would have to be careful where they do that. And what they would do is actually turn around, and they would stop along the way, and they would actually give everybody a sandwich, and you eat a little something, and you drink something, and you keep on going. It was similar to that from what he was telling me about truck driving back early years, because they didn't have the comfortable trucks like they have now. And trucks
Mm-hmm.
weren't made like they made now either. They were actually smaller trucks, way smaller than what you see on the road now. Uh, and he was telling me about his wife, Mother Williams. she actually fixed his food for a week, that way he could carry for a week to while he was out there to be able to have something to eat, because you just couldn't, there was nowhere you could stop. And so like they have now, like the truck stop or go in and go into a place and just have and eat. But basically, what opened up a lot now, I didn't start driving until 1976. So by 1976, things was a whole lot different. The only difference I found driving as far as like getting a job in 1976 as opposed to young people getting jobs now is the fact that when 1976, there still was a lot of places still had unions, and those unions were actually occupied by mostly Caucasians.
Mm-hmm.
Very few blacks, if any, at all, got in. Uh, they were in there by that time, but they still wasn't finished. So, especially in the southern states, when it come down to southern, and the southern states really didn't have a lot of union no way. Most of your unions, like right around Richmond here, when I tried to get in the truck driving, I was really at home, because what it was, uh, I could drive anything at the time because I'd always watched my father. You drove the tractor, you drove the mules and the slides, and just, I mean, it was just something that came natural for me to
Okay.
drive anyway. So the first time I ever have seen allowed me to drive a car, and I always remember I would sit there and watch my father as he drove that stick shift and how he shifted it, and he would pause, then he would shift it and he'd go like that. And I watched him do that. And what I did when I got into the car the first time with Hal's team, and she turned around there and gave me the opportunity to drive
Mm-hmm.
from where my mother's house is now, down the road where we used to live. And I got in there, and when I came off the gas, just came off the clutch real quick and went like that, and then I stopped. And after that, from that time on, I never remember actually having any problem with driving. But when it comes
Okay.
down to truck driving, my first job I tried to get was with the Commonwealth Stock Company in Cambridge, Virginia. And a guy told me, says, you meet me up here that evening. He said, I'll take you on the truck with me, and I'll show you what you need to do. And I went up there that evening, and the guy turned around and said, well, I can't take you on the truck. But I knew what that was about. It wasn't about the fact he couldn't take me. He wouldn't take me because he didn't want me to learn what he was doing. I figured that out because I found out later that that's really what it was. He encouraged somebody else that he knew that he wanted to train to move into another driving job with them. I left that and I worked at Commonwealth Company for a while. And that was another thing I learned to work ethic when my mother was telling me too, when you go back to work ethic, now I jump back to truck. But that was something I learned then because she was telling me I got a job sweeping, and she was telling me the man always stood down at the end up on a little uh, elevate like a little balcony, and he just
Mm-hmm.
watched everybody work. And she said, "You whatever you do, don't you stop moving. If there's nothing to sweep, you just keep the broom going. Because once you stop that broom, he gonna call you, and he gonna send you home. He's not gonna use you. So that's one thing that taught a lot of black people work ethics because they knew how people thought, so they knew they had to work. When it come down to truck driving, I'm gonna go back to truck driving now because when I got in truck driving, I actually went to truck driving school because I used my military GI loan for some of that and paid for that, and I went to truck driving school. And then what it was before that, I went to a place here in Richmond. And I went to a trucking company, and the guy told me, say, I went to apply for the job, and he said, well, you don't, where have you ever drove trucks? And I said, I haven't. I said, I've drove, farm tractors and stuff like that at home, which for a lot of Caucasian young men, that's exactly what they did, and they got hired by just saying that they drove on the farm, you know. But with a black person, that didn't happen for you unless you really got a good break. But the guy told me, he said, if you go to truck driving school and you come back, I'll give you a job. So I went to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, went to truck driving school, and I went up there, and I thought I was doing something, so I came on back with my little certificate, went to the guy, and the guy said, I can't give you no job. you don't have no experience. I said, man, wait a minute. You told me that if I went to truck driving school, and this was a black guy that I was
Okay.
talking to, and he told me, say, if you go to truck driving school and come back, I'll get you a job. So I figured I had a job when I came back, but I didn't have a job. Then he told me I had no experience, and that sort of disgusted me a little bit. I said, wait a minute here. I didn't went out here and I ain't spending my money, but Uncle Sam's money paid for it. But I still felt like it was my money because the
Right.
government money really is part of mine. But basically, as a whole, I left there and I came to D.C. and I went over to M Street Southeast, over there next to the Navy Yard. And Stewart Petroleum, they had trucks lined up, just lined up running. And I saw this guy, I was walking around, I was going down there, and this tall black guy, they called him Solid. And the guy told me, said, you, can you drive? I said, yes, I can drive anything you got over. He said, I tell you what, you go over West Virginia Avenue and you tell them Sarge sent you over there. Now, see, one thing about myself, before I ever went to truck driving school, I had a problem at home with the police officer stopping me all the time. And they would give me tickets and saying I was running 19 miles over the speed limit. And a lot of times I was never speeding. They would just turn around and come back and get me. Only one time in my life that I actually was speeding, and I bought my motorcycle. And I turned around
Okay.
there and I saw the state trooper coming up the road up from my mother's house where it is now. And I saw him coming, so I came out the turn and I headed uh, south toward Blackstone. And I just turned around there and shut down on it and went down the road, turned up in the side and stopped my motorcycle and
Uh-huh.
cut it off and was sitting on the side. He came, excuse me, he came down the road and his car bowed down like it was praying. And he was sliding them tires and he put that car in reverse and came back and said, I clocked you and you were speeding. I said, you're right, I was. I was certainly speeding. I said, but you didn't clock me. And then he turned around there and said, well, I'm going to write you a ticket for speeding. I said, go ahead and write it. And he wrote the ticket. I went to court. And the judge turned around. I had been to court, I guess, probably 10 or 15 times before. Because one time I changed the gear in my car to make my car, actually, I got it calibrated, which was illegal, but I did it because I knew my car was right. So I put another gear in the car so that when I got it calibrated, it would be off. So I carried it to the judge, and the judge told me, so I don't even want to see your calibration. He said, you guilty. And so when this guy gave me that ticket and I went to court, by that time, I had probably about, not including the top page, I probably had a 9-page driving record that just roughly happened in Cambridge, Virginia, only,
Wow.
only place that I had. And they turned around there. When I went to Stewart Petroleum, the guy, I filled out the application, and I knew God was with me then. I knew for sure that God was looking out for me because I filled that application out, and the man turned around there and asked me, said, when do you want to go to work? He looked at the application, and he flipped the first page of my driving record and tore it in half and threw it in the trash and asked me, said, when you want to go to work? I said, I'll go to work
Wow.
tonight. He said, we
That's
got two shifts. 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 in the evening, 6:30 in the evening, 6:30 in the morning. I said, I'll take the nights. And I worked for Stewart Petroleum season-wise 4 years. And I worked for 1 year full-time. And after that, pretty much, like I said, I probably moved back home for a while after that to help my father, with some different things at home when I really came back. But I don't think I ever went back permanently. But after that, I pretty much got other jobs. And in my career,
right.
I never been able to get in a union job. I don't know why, because what they would do with unions when I came back around Richmond, a lot of the union jobs, what they would do is that this was going on even in like 79, 80, 85. This was still going on. And a lot of times they would turn around there and they would hire their family members. In other words, if their father worked for the union, what he would do is when he retired, he'd get his son in the union, or he'd get his cousin or brother or somebody like that. And that's what they were doing. So that's why a lot of times you didn't find a lot of blacks in the union because the blacks, they couldn't, they wasn't in the union at a whole lot. I met a
Because
lot
it's
of guys say
an
they'd been in there
opportunity.
for some years, but they didn't do that much. It wasn't that many people that I met uh, that was back a ways and never been in the union.
So the truck driving guy told you about the trip that he didn't want to take you on the trip and he got somebody else, was that the first time that you had experienced racism on that type
Oh,
of job?
no, no. Well, from my own people, basically, I mean, I experienced a little bit, but I didn't consider it to be racism. But no, I experienced racism a whole lot, basically around Cambridge. I mean, basically, that wasn't anything new because when my mother and when we went to stores when we were small, you were always taught not to touch anything in the store, you know, and because they would most times do the bargaining and go through, and you would just follow them through. But I had a guy one time, place was called Cambridge Harbor, and I didn't pay much attention to it, but I told my mother about it. I was probably about maybe 12 years old at the time, and I went up there to get something at the hall. And this guy turned around there and he asked me at the front what I wanted, and I told him what I wanted. And this person passed gas in front of me all the way back to where he got caught and the piece that I was sent to the hallway. That
Wow.
wasn't the first time you experienced. Those are the kind of things that you most times experience as a child because you didn't really know that much about it, I mean, as far as people. But it was a
Just
place that
rude.
you just, the line you just didn't cross with them because you knew that uh, things and stories that had been told to you by your parents, and you listen to other older people talk about things that had happened to them. And you
Mhm.
learn by listening to other people. So a lot of times you may experience racism, but you didn't experience it in a way that you would have thought that it was racism. You knew it was, but the fact remains that you just had a place and you pretty much stayed within that certain area of life and showed a certain amount of respect. And you just
Yeah.
didn't bother about saying anything or doing anything to cause anybody to say anything or do anything. But they would say things anyway. They would call your name still, you know. But you just go right on because you knew it wasn't any retaliation for yourself because you all you were going to do was cause yourself some trouble.
Okay, I got two things I want you to do. And this is good. So the next word, the next word for your song is light bulbs. Okay? I want you to do a song on light bulbs, and then I want you to preach a message about the light bulb and how it's important to have the light bulb in your heart.
Oh, okay. The light bulb is a bulb that everybody may need, and there they will find that they have to go the way. But there is a light bulb shining over everybody, and we call it the sun. And every day it shines in the night. It also brings light for us from the moon. And we can see our way as we walk about. We know that that's the light that God provides for us each and every day.
That is cool. Okay, that's good. So talk about the importance of having that light in our heart.
Well, I can give you a good message on that because this is what I look at. I always use an illustration. If I had a message, I would let people know that they always have a song about this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. But I
Hmm.
would have my message would be that everybody has a light, but your light is no good to you if you don't turn around there and allow yourself to be plugged into the socket, that power from the Almighty God will come down and flow in through that cord into your light and light up your life. That when somebody else see you, you'll be shining so bright that they'll turn around and say, "Who is that? And what is that?" But then they'll say, "Well, that can't be nobody but God shining through that person because he's glowing like a flower and blooming like he never looked before."
Amazing. That sounds like an altar call. So look, if you had to look at yourself as a 6 year old, now, and I always ask people this question, what would you have told yourself at 6 years old as to where you are now? What to look for?
Oh, if I could go back from 6 years old. Now, see, I remember something about 6 years old because
Talk about it.
now, when I was 6 years old and I went to school on my first day, I remember putting my feet up on the desk. The teacher was asking everybody what they wanted to be. And I told them, say, I want to be an airplane pilot. And I think if I could look back on my life from where I am now and have just a little bit of the mindset that I have now, I would be a terrible person to deal with because I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I would be far, far beyond because I would take advantage of every opportunity and learn everything that I can to move forward, to strive, to be a better and far greater person in myself, as well as being a great asset to the Lord's work.
That's good. That's good. And because so many people, they have regrets, and sometimes you don't have somebody to push you to where you want to be, or you just don't have the knowledge to where you want to be. But I always think that wherever we are now is that we're there for a reason or purpose, because somewhere along that path to now we've passed somebody's life that we have either helped or influenced, or they have helped or influenced us to even get where we are. So I think that's really good that you have a memory to go back at 6 year old to even thinking about flying, but it's never too late.
Well, one thing I think about too as a whole, your life as a whole, see, you may not have achieved everything that you might want to do. Now, myself, like you say, I always say, I've never been a super person in the book. I mean, I can learn about anything if I set my mind to it. But
Mm-hmm.
God had given me an aptitude that I could always turn around there and I can do. If I see something done, I can go back and do it. If I take something apart, I can put it back together.
Wow.
That's the type of person that I am. Like if I take an engine out of a car and I lay it out and I take it out of that car, I can go back. If it's 6 months later, I can still put that thing back together. I can put it back in that vehicle like it's supposed to be because I have a memory to do things and an aptitude in that area to really be able to do things. But one thing about my life, I don't really have any regrets in my life because I know
Right.
that when I look back on my life, I know that God has always been looking out for me when I wasn't looking out for myself. And somebody else, now my father, I always think about because my father has been the youngest child, and none of the other boys had ever really followed in my father's footsteps. As far as like going out later years, like Daniel did, he did. He followed, the religious beliefs and everything like that, and uh, lived a life to that point. And I think my father, as a whole, in me, because he even wanted me to join the Masonry. But by that time, I was in what you call the Holiness Church. And the Holiness Church doesn't really believe in being in anything like the Masons
Mm-hmm.
because they look at the Masons as sort of like a cult. You know, the things that they do is not they're not spiritual. Some people, they want to be in there because it allows them to make connections with somebody else. But later in life, I found that it really wouldn't have benefited me anything because when it boils down to the fact that the black Masons and the Caucasian Masons, they're totally two different entities. So
Okay.
they didn't count you on the same level as they did. It's every now and then I heard talk of like if a person was a Mason and they got stopped by the police, if the police was a Mason, and the police, if he put their arm out and they make a certain signal or do certain things or say a certain thing, they would let him go. Because Mr. Miller and I used to run team on the truck. Mr. Miller was telling me about him and the other gentleman. Guys stopped. They both was driving truck. When the guy stopped, the other gentleman was a Mason. So what the police did, he turned around there and he didn't give him a ticket. He gave Mr. Miller a ticket. Miller said, wait a minute, that wasn't right. He said, I'm not a Mason, but we both doing the same thing. So why should you write me a ticket? And just because I'm not a Mason. But I think as a whole, I saw some of my father, and I often think about that he wanted one of us to actually be able to come along and not only to and do some things, so he wanted me to do that, but he also wanted me as a whole, I think, to come along and follow in the footsteps. Because my father, he believed in what he did. He loved farming. He enjoyed his life as a minister, and he was faithful to what he believed and faithful to his work. And I think he wanted one of us to follow that. And so I think as a whole, God brought me back home a lot of times, and I sort of went that way, but I didn't go 100%, early enough to just walk into the positions and take over the things that, he was doing. Because farming was never my thing. I knew I wasn't going to finish still.
Cut out to be. Okay. Well, this has been great. So I want you to take us out on your favorite song.
Oh, well, my favorite song is the one that they're going to play for me when I turn around there and leave this earth. If they know, and my children will know, that I always say, don't worry about planting me in the ground. Just take my ashes and spread them out. And they'll sing that song when you do that. Just put this song on the road again, making music with my friends again. And that's what they can turn around and be like the old parrot in the cage when they turned him loose. That's what he was singing.
You know what's funny? Last week I went to the nursing home, and I told this on the Zoom, and I took some, whatever we have in Jesus and some religious and Christian songs, and somewhere midway, I played Willie Nelson on the road again. And the people, most of them were just, either have some form of dementia or Alzheimer's. Right. But when I played that song or familiar song, they knew the words. They did like this, or they pat their feet. So it's ironic that you would say that song on the road again, which is a beautiful song. It is absolutely.
Willie Nelson has a lot of good songs, though, because he always sings songs that's related to society and life as a whole. You have a lot of good country and western songs.
Yeah. Well, we grew up with country and
contributing his songs to something related to people and things they were doing.
Oh, it was always on my mind. But yeah, you're right. He has a lot of good songs, but we grew up with country and western. So as a musician, I have a love for all types of music because I listen to the instrumental part, I listen to the vocals and things of that nature. But I thank you for being my guest today. And I had to change the title instead of saying open mic. I changed it to conversation because that's all we were doing, having conversation. But you have certainly shared some very good facts, especially about the dentist part. Hopefully I don't have to get any more crowns or bridges and stuff, but that's an interesting process of what you were talking about. And again,
it's not a quick process basically to get it done. I mean, because basically that's probably one of the most expensive things that they charge for. Even the dental lab person doesn't make the money unless he owns the lab, because when I worked with a guy at a lab when I came out of dental lab school here in Richmond, so it makes a difference. But yeah, it's a process, and it's enjoyable work though, but it's the lab man. He really works. The dentist makes 99% of the money.
Oh, I agree. That's why that stuff costs so much. I'm thankful for insurance.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm thankful for it.
I've enjoyed it myself. I didn't think I would have too much to say, but I appreciate the questions you asked because it helped me.
Hey, you got a lot to say. we didn't even look. I didn't even open the floor for you to preach yet. One day I'm gonna come back on and give you the microphone and let you give you 30, 45 minutes so you can tell about the goodness of the Lord and get your dance on.
Oh yeah, well I'm not. I put myself in a position today so I wouldn't be able to get up and dance.
Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna put you on the spot today to dance. But no, I'm saying honestly, all jokes aside, the love and the joy that you always have, and that's one of the things that I admire, that display you always have it. I mean, And that's rare for not it's not rare, but everybody just doesn't have that type of joy most of the time. It's not sometimes it's not their fault. It's just things in life changes, or somebody took the last, Fruit Loops, and or took the milk and you couldn't put some milk in your cereal. Little things
Right,
get people
right.
upset.
Well, I always believe like this with coffee. I think like if I like my coffee with sugar, I'm really going to express that to somebody that I might be able to let them understand the joy that I have and what I do. I enjoy life because of the fact that I've been a person that I've never let anybody control my spirit to the point that if you upset, that's not going to upset me because I'm going to keep the joy that I have within myself, Because people, a lot of times, I remember when I was young, people used to always ask me, why are you frowning? Why are you frowning? But I didn't think I was frowning. But I guess I may have been seen to have been frowning because I wasn't walking around with a grin on my face. But the thing
People tell
is,
me
I
the
just
same
didn't bother.
thing.
I didn't bother people. I didn't bother people.
Yeah, when I'm focused, I'm looking like this. And some people say, why are you frowning? I'm not frowning. I'm actually concentrating, but people are so used to me just joking and, having fun that when I'm
Right.
focused, they like, well, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm trying to figure out the next joke I'm going to tell on you. But anyway, okay. All right.
I
So
got you.
I'm going to take you out, but don't leave out. But thank you very much. Coming up
I
again on
thank
this.
you. I thank you.
Yeah, this was great. Coming up again on this week on tomorrow, we have 1 hour allowed, and we always need volunteer readers. At 6 o'clock on Tuesday, we're bringing Vivian Salters back for part 2. And on Thursday at 5:45, we have a series called How Can Two Walk Together Except They Agree? And it has nothing to do with couples, nothing to do with singles. It's just practical things that you learn in church. And it's coming from a dynamite couple that it'll be really good. And then Friday, I haven't got the announcement yet, but I'm going to have a lady on here and several mothers. They are mothers of the African American children, boys, males that have been killed during the pandemic, the ones that have been high profile cases. So they will be on this Friday. I'm going to get the time together. So I want people to tune in for that as well. But Jarvis Booker, thank you again for joining DJ Straight, coming from
Thank
Praise from
you.
the
Thank
Closet.
you.
And as always, subscribe to our channel. Go on out and listen to our music on WGLB Live. And we've got some new shows, one called What Do You Think? So we are open for any topics. They can be fun topics, any topics we are open for. And when you all see me doing this, oh, okay. I'm getting text messages. People are loving you and loving to talk. So thank you again, and I'm going to take you out. Have a wonderful evening. Don't leave the studio. I'll take you off set, but don't leave the studio, please. All right, folks, you have heard me and my guest Jarvis Booker wind up for another episode of Open Mic. What a great way to have on Palm Sunday, and then also just to sit back and relax. I don't have the fire in here because I would probably start coughing, but it was nothing but a little fireside chat. So until the next time, this is DJ Straight signing out. Have a wonderful week and be safe.